May curiosity lead our way. Enjoy.
Well, yeah, thank you, Corey. Thanks for coming on and taking the time to sit down with me.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited.
Could you, for anyone who doesn't know you, could you kind of describe yourself how you might to a room full of people who don't know you?
Uh yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think the simplest way to explain it is I answer questions and I help people sometimes when I can within the sport of uh, physique development. So whether that be
Mm,
within bodybuilding or even non-competitive athletes, just individuals who put a lot of emphasis into fitness and to I really want to say just building their physiques the way they want. My niche has somehow become just physique slash performance enhancements in the realm of okay, let's these things are probably going to be used, and for individuals who want to use them, there's definitely a wrong way. And on the female side of things, that's an area where there isn't a lot of room to get it wrong. So
right.
I, I think I don't know how do I do. You think that's pretty accurate for a depiction?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about you either, so this is partially for myself. But yeah, what I see online is you speak a lot about performance enhancement, and um, you're able to read blood work and these types of things in terms of how to help someone who may be feeling more stuck, or through whatever kind of roadblocks they've been hitting with their physique development or change. So that's kind of the perception, um, which is one of the reasons I don't need to talk about any of that. I'm more interested in kind of what's your background and who are you. So I'm always curious how someone would describe themselves and where they go. Is it, job based? Is it your personality based? Is it skills, or, what's involved?
Yeah. Gosh, so much of what I do across the board, I think has become who I am. But I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think there's a negative connotation around um, career path and how much emphasis we really place on that becoming a big part of our identity. But for listeners, I am IFBB Bikini Pro. So within the realm of bodybuilding, there's a professional league. So I compete in the bikini division. I've been competing for about 10 years. So I mean, that definitely is a portion, a component of my identity. But I would say largely for the sport, I'm a terrible representation just because I put so much emphasis on not letting that become your whole identity. And I think
Right.
that's important. I think when you look at how vain the sport actually is, which there's nothing wrong with being honest about that. I think we have to be honest. Like there's a lot of emphasis on how you look and wanting to continually, um, you rise to that pursuit at various levels. But I think from a wellness standpoint, uh, I think from that aspect, it's really easy to let that become your entire identity. And that's been something even from the start. I got in the sport 2014, 2015. It's
Mhm.
like, man, like I'm going to burn out if all of my value is placed on how I'm doing on stage, because frankly, so much of it is out of your control.
Yeah. Well, and I see that all the time. Like, I don't have a formal medical background, but I've been a patient for 36 years. And I see it. I'm in the plasmapheresis department. So, with dialysis patients and autoimmune disorders and these types of things. So, I see it. Well, I've seen it from literally almost day one. People, they'll wake up with an autoimmune disorder one day, and now they're unable to do literally anything. And there's this very helpless, lost energy to them, where it's just like, I don't even know what to do. Because and partially because I think it's an identity piece as well. Because now all the things that you're used to doing, that you're telling yourself, when I get back to doing all the things I used to do, then I'll be better. It's like the reality of it is that time may never come. And that it's a fragile thing to try to build on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have to have a greater motivator that is um, outside of something that can be taken from you. I mean,
Mhm.
like if something can be taken, is it ever really yours?
Right.
So when you look at like what I do for work, I mean, like getting really granular. I mean, I joke, but at the end of the day, it is like I answer questions. I just help people make sense of what they're doing, and not from a place of, oh, this is the best way or this is the right way, but really relative to the individual and their needs, their desires, what risk they're willing to take. I think it's important just to be informed. And I mean, within medicine, that's something that, I mean, like, and for listeners, I just finished nursing school actually a couple months ago, unlicensed. So I'm very reluctant to call
Sure.
myself a registered nurse. Take my boards. I don't know, hopefully this month, maybe next month, we'll see.
Yeah.
But within that, like, I mean, they drill informed consent and like the exact practices that go around that. Like, as a nurse, that's not something I can obtain. That's something I can sign off that it was obtained. And within recreational pharmacology, I mean, like, really, that's an aspect that, frankly, the requirements for signing off on understanding what you're doing, I mean, are non-existent. So
Mhm.
I found a lot of happiness, a lot of pride from being able to just offer clarity and be like, yo, like, at the end of the day, like, you're an adult. You should make the decisions that you want to. You shouldn't make a decision because I tell you, like, hey, this is right or wrong. You should make the decision that you feel comfortable with. But there are definitely risks associated with some of the things that people do with and without supplements. But it's like, how can you make an informed decision if you're not informed?
Yeah. What do you know, or do you remember like a certain time in your life that was kind of a, from now forward, I want to be more informed within whatever area of interest you have? Like, I know you mentioned you have a background in production and you're in nursing. And so all of that is very much like education based and skill based and a continuous pursuit of learning.
Yeah. My approach to, I want to say, like, really furthering whatever accolade it is, whatever area that I'm interested in, it has largely come from wanting to be autonomous, wanting to
Mhm.
be resourceful. I personally, I take a lot of pride in that, in my ability to do something, and particularly if I'm working from the ground up, if it's something that, like, reasonably I shouldn't know how to do well, that process is really enjoyable for me. So when I was in high school, I started taking dual credit classes because my sister took AP. She went to college. She didn't get credit for these classes at my high school. They're like, hey, there's $75 a semester. I'm like, that's amazing. We're going to do that. That means I don't have to take those classes like literally in a year. Cool. I ended up junior year, I got my associates. My counselor was like, "Oh yeah, hey, you're done. Like, the next year you can take all rec courses." I was like, "Can I just graduate? Can I just be done now?" And it kind of spiraled into this pursuit of, like, okay, how can I, whatever I'm doing, how can I get the most out of it? How can I be truly effective from a time standpoint and an effort standpoint? Um, and that really drove me in a lot of ways. So when I was in school, I mean, like, I took a lot of online courses. I was able to travel more. I ended up moving to New York at 18, lived there for a year, took all my courses online, which at the time, like, hybrid learning wasn't really a thing. So I'm still going in doing like proctored exams, but to do that from A&M back in 2013, I mean, like, that was, it felt good to be able to capitalize on the ability to have, I guess, really mobility with whatever it is I wanted to do. Same thing with production. I mean, like, there are a lot of areas, as you know, under the umbrella of, you can be an editor, you can be a director of production. And I found it really enjoyable to be able to work with different clients, and bring a multitude of skills and not be like, oh, yeah, audio, I can't do that. So I just told myself, yeah, we're going to figure this out. And the same thing with bodybuilding. When I got into the sport, it was 2014. It was very taboo. Like, it was very unheard of to be self-coached.
Mhm.
At the time, I was like, I understand energy balance. Like, I'm not going to pay I grew up with an eating disorder. I'm not going to pay someone to starve me. I got this. Okay.
Right.
And that was the mindset that I had, like, throughout bodybuilding. And, like, unless someone is actually going to provide value to me, if it's something that reasonably I can't learn how to do effectively, I'm going to do it myself, because I'm broke, and because this probably is a good investment, from a skill development standpoint.
Mhm.
So
Well, and who can you trust in the other side of things, like in the bodybuilding world, especially now, but even back then, like it's hard to tell in with drugs and even without, but it's just kind of the Wild West, right? It's very unregulated, as of course it is, but you just kind of pick someone who maybe a friend of yours recommended or somebody, especially back then, the online presence wasn't nearly what it is today. And so, like, you could literally be taking things that, especially on the female side, as you know very well, like there's some long-term consequences to not knowing what's in the bottle that you're putting in your body. And like, that's not reversible. So anybody, even on the men's side, there's just in general, if you don't know what's in a bottle, you probably shouldn't take the bottle. But people do.
No, no, they do all the time. Last week, I had a consult with a guy who's 54. He's done 2 shows, and I'm looking at his lab work. And yes, he's enhanced, but I mean, he's like year 1 into being an enhanced athlete. And I'm looking at his GFR, and I'm like, this is 54. This is not good, sir. I'm looking at his lipids, and I'm like, you don't need to be thinking, like, the question is not like, hey, how should I peak? Like, no, like, you need, like, you're going to be on dialysis, especially if you keep abusing in this way, which I don't
Right.
even think he realized. He was just, yeah, I'm working with the coach. This is what they tell me that men's physique athletes do. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not looking at your GFR. They're not looking at your lipids. They don't see these areas that, frankly, you can be in the space right now and focus on getting on stage. These things will catch up to you. It's not if, it's when. And at that point, I mean, you know very well, it's like there's not really turning back from dialysis. Like, you're there, and that's just a thing you do now.
Yeah. Well, and in any of that stuff, like liver's one thing, the turnover in the cells is a lot faster and a lot more reparative. Kidneys, not so much. Right. And so when you're playing with things and you get on dialysis, like you said, or heart failure, also been there. It's not great. Do not recommend. Right. But it's these things where it's like, oh shit, life was good and health is a privilege that people don't realize they have until they don't. And that's something that I say all the time, but it's so true. And it's like this whole shit or get off the pot sort of mentality from my perspective, where people, it's like, do something to stay healthy because you have that health thing right now and you just won't long term. As your 54-year-old, like, it's great to be on stage, but if you can't walk next year or 2 weeks, or not 2 weeks, 2 years from now, you cut off your foot because you can't move anymore. Like, life changes.
Life changes, you take it for granted. And I mean, these things that we treat as inexhaustible, as infinite, I mean, like, they're very finite. And I mean, like, on the female side of things, you look at, like, okay, fertility, how does that play out? And like, the most common question I get is like, okay, well, I want to do this sport. What drugs can I take to do it faster? And I'm like, yo, without doing this sport, you are made. And always the question is like, oh, and I don't want to do anything that impacts my ability or potential to have kids. And I'm like, listen, doing the sport impacts your potential to have kids. Okay. Drugs aside, do it natty. That's terrible for you. But like, just being in that state, which frankly, a lot of people are already in that state, whether they realize it or not, there just isn't, they're not capturing what is actually happening within their body, and they're not aware of it. I mean, ignorance is bliss. So I think when we start considering, okay, like, yes, owning that this sport, bodybuilding, is very vain, and it's a pursuit, it's an artificial state of stress that we get to self-impose. That's a luxury. But doing it so recklessly, with or without drugs, I mean, there are consequences there that eventually they do catch up to you.
What role do you see stress playing in general? Like, of course, within the space of chosen stress and bodybuilding, those things, but just in general, like Gen Pop people, or just to the average listener, it's my perception that people don't have the best ability to offload stress day to day. And so the stress management kind of tools don't get prioritized necessarily. And then there's all these other ongoing issues like sleep issues, or, ongoing headaches, or I don't know, weight gain due to glucose or poor glucose management and not enough movement and these kinds of things. But I just see I work part-time in a health food store as well, and there's people come in all the time for things and just want a pill to take. It's like, what can I add to my life that costs $50 and then I'll just carry on? It's like you literally drink no water in a day, you sleep poorly, according to what you just told me, and you don't walk almost ever outside of your car to the house. And just you're staring at the wrong thing. Like, do some positive, move some big rocks for your health versus look for magnesium or something, right?
Yeah, the 5-HTP is not the answer, dude.
Right,
That's
right.
not gonna fix everything. No, I'm a big okay. So internally, like the dialogue I have with myself to get myself to that realization, or I've gotten myself to that realization with stress management. Um, if the goal really is to be as effective and efficient with our efforts, we need to move the big rocks, as you said. Big rocks, supplements, those are the easiest rocks to move. They're the most convenient. And they're the ones that, frankly, yeah, they can move the needle, but they won't make a dent if these other aspects aren't being managed. And I'm a firm believer, not just with stress management, I think with relationships too, like interpersonal relationships. I do think that people tend to have the relationships and then the state that they want to be in. They have the ones that they want. Otherwise, they would change it. If it wasn't unbearable, they would seek an alternative. But if they do believe like this is best case scenario, this is my best alternative, they're going to stick with it. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to habit stacking and just finding a catalyst for change, things aren't bad enough to have that motivation, to find that motivation. So what do? You accept it, you choose it. But I think it's hard to hear. I think it sucks to hear, be like, hey, like you're unhappy with your body, but you're not doing the things like you know what to do. It's like
Yeah.
you eat less, you move more. And I mean, like, sure, we can get very nuanced with it, but generally, even people who are earlier in like the skill development of fat loss, of just whatever body composition manipulation, it's like you know that what you're eating is too much. You know you're not working out. Like under no pretense are you like, oh, I'm doing the things that I need to do to have the body that I want or to feel the way I do. But I think relative to stress, because that's like a big one. I'm like, I, I encourage like a lot of the clients I work with, and like you have allostatic stress, but a portion of that is perceived.
Mhm.
That you should be working on daily. Like you should be working on moment to moment. Like, hey, how much does this matter? How much control do I actually have over it? Yeah, there are things that are out of our control. That is life. And like, I just had a friend. She's telling me like her partner. He's like, these bad things keep happening to me. I feel like I'm cursed. I feel like I did something, like I wronged someone or a higher power. And it's interesting. I'm not disagreeing with like him feeling that way, but truly I'm like, every unexpected event, every turn, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to go forward. It's an opportunity to figure out what you're not doing right. And like, I mean, to almost look at it like, no, it's a consequence that is deserving. I feel like that in itself just perpetuates this idea of perceived stress. Like, okay, well, let's sit in it. Let's ruminate on why I deserve these bad things to happen. Well, okay, is the alternative nothing bad ever happens? Well, in that case, is there really a difference between good and bad? If everything's good, how would you be able to
How'd you know?
differentiate?
Yeah. Well, and I think people associate or just have this pipe dream of happiness all the time. And there's so many layers to, what I'm hearing back from you. And I guess it's my perception that a lot of people have a hard time dissociating from their thoughts and who they are. And so like, it's something that I've kind of tried to wrap my head around for a long time in terms of like a lot of people that I talk to, for the last 10 years within the hospital or in my life day to day. There's kind of this sense of external locus of control, really. And there's kind of this resistance to taking on responsibility to make the changes that you're speaking to. And one of the things that I think is a problem, or at least an initial hurdle, is getting too caught up in their thoughts, and then it perpetuates a stress cycle of, well, all I do is think about things. There's all these worries and what ifs that are negative, and you just can't break out of it. But I think if you think that you are your thoughts, that's a big problem in the long term. And that's one of the things, like I said on the episode with Eric today, but I talk to myself in third person all the time. And it adds a layer of levity and separation to, like, even if it is like, I just fucked up, instead of beating myself up and like, man, what the hell, you know better, whatever. It's like, come on now. Really? We just did that again? It's like, I know, but yes, there's some dopamine associated things or poor choices or whatever, right? It's like, I know I should have went to bed last night before 11:30. I didn't. Today I'm tired. It's like, come on, man. We've been working on our bedtime for 3 years. It's
Yeah.
like, I know.
I love that. I think the like overarching term that I've kind of coined from it, like through like CPT, is like inner child work, is like, rather than approach it in more of like a white knuckle, like, oh, you're so stupid, how could you do this? It's like, oh, like, you fucked up again. It's like, I get it. I get it. You wanted to stay up. It makes complete sense. It's great, isn't it? Like, I get it.
Yeah.
You wanted to scroll, or with like food. Okay. Like, yeah, it fucking tastes good. Like, rather than have that resistance of like, okay, well, let me hold myself to this impossible standard that ultimately I will fail at. It's not even a matter of like enough discipline. Like, come on, like, I'm not going to live that way. Like, I mean, no one should really have to. I get joy out of the discipline and the delayed gratification, yes, but I'm also not going to fault myself for wanting things that feel good. Like, I think that is human nature, but how would you parent yourself? How would you approach that? Well, would you like, I mean, that's the borderline abusive. Like, would you just shit on your kid every time they wanted to do something that, I mean, is a completely natural impulse? It's like, no. But hey, what's our system? Like, how do we create a framework where this doesn't continue to happen? Or even further, how do we allow ourselves to see the value of not repeating that behavior? It's still probably going to happen. There's going to be incidents where, yep, I didn't make the best choice, but how do we make it to where we're not making the worst choice? How do we make it to where that slip up, that indulgence isn't detrimental to our long-term goals, or to really, I guess, the view we have of ourselves? Like, I mean, how often are we in a place of cognitive dissonance, and is that something that we're kind of enabling? Do we actually believe these values that we want to have? Because if we don't, okay, then change them. That's going to feel a lot better. But if we really are committed to, like, I want to be this kind of person, I want to stick to these principles, our actions should reflect that. And if they're not, well, then we just work that. Like, we figure out, okay, why aren't our actions reflecting that? Is it possibly because the standard is impossibly high, or the expectation we have for ourselves is so great, there's a mismatch, or there's too big of a gap between where we want to be and the skill we have now? Because to me, like, recognizing that's incredibly freeing.
I'm wondering, how do you help a client sort of find that middle ground between like setting the bar too high with an impossible standard, and then also having a limiting belief that's like, one thing that I see in people all the time is, I just have this foolish optimism that I know, if you have a dream, I see it possible for you through 1,000 different ways. I just don't know what they all are yet, but I fucking know that it can be real. And like, I feel that in the moment, and I don't know how to better communicate yet, or it's really an ongoing process. Like, how do I have you believe what I like, see what I see right now for you, and just take that on? Because it doesn't feel like it's too much when you see that you can, right? But it's when there's doubt gets involved, it's like, I couldn't do that. It's like, but you fucking can. You're choosing not to. It's not that simple, but like, there are actions and steps you can take progressing over time to get at least to something that resembles that dream.
Absolutely. I love that. And I do think making it as simple and digestible as possible, for me, that's been helpful. And I find it helpful with clients. So, first attacking, okay, is the doubt a form of self sabotage? Oftentimes it is. Oftentimes like our brains are designed to keep us safe. They're not designed to help us do hard things. So going back to third person, hey, I get it. If you fail, that's going to feel like shit. But it's also going to be really cool because like up until this point, you kind of have the proof that what you're doing, you can do. Remember when you did something you didn't think you could do, even as small as it was? Okay, you might not have that belief that you can apply that same framework now, but the method of actually doing it despite doubt, that is the way we get there. Like, I think like without, like, courage is predicated on fear, right? So I feel like if you're not fearful, you're not really having to display courage.
Right. It's that whole do it scared thing.
Yeah. Do it scared. Do it despite very, very good reason to doubt your ability. I think also it's like, okay, worst case scenario. And that's the framework I use for like decision making is like, what is the decision I can live with? So simple decisions. Okay, well, doing something that I've never done before. I mean, it's kind of, I want to be someone that will do something despite not having proof that I can do it. That's something I value, and that's the kind of person I want to be. So seeking out those opportunities, yes, but also being honest when I'm at a point where I'm like, hey, like you are reaching too high, and that in itself also self-sabotage. 4D chess with myself or with clients with their brains is like, okay, if you set the bar too high, you're setting yourself up to fail. Now you have a different kind of proof of evidence that you can't do it. Let's make it attainable and slight overreaching when it's appropriate. But frankly, like there are very, very complex ways or complex skills, I think, that will not happen overnight. And if they did, they wouldn't be as gratifying. So there's that aspect. But I also think like with uncertainty as a whole, if we didn't have that, I mean, like getting to the finish line, like crossing that threshold, it would be easy. It wouldn't be as rewarding. So, I mean, like I also kind of frame it that way is like, if you knew that, in the case of a client, if you knew that becoming a pro was like inevitable, like truly you could see that into the future, you probably wouldn't try as hard. You probably aren't going to do the things that you actually need to do, and you're not going to learn along the way. But along the way, there's so many lessons that there's so many side quests. There's so many side quests that you have to go through in order to get there. And I think it's, there's a German poet I really like, Rilke, who talks about like, if you had the answers now, you wouldn't be able to live out the answers. Like you have to sit in that, you have to embrace the answers or the lack of certainty, because if that was guaranteed, you wouldn't know what to do with it because you're not that person yet. So in terms of clients, I mean, I'm not putting that into a voice memo or check-in, but I am breaking it down like, hey, this is easy. What? Okay, this week, bedtime. Tell your spouse to turn off The Walking Dead because that's going to fuck with your sleep. Tell them that we got 1.5 episodes max, but 10 p.m., like, that's too much. Over. Okay. Yeah. Just shut it down. Okay. And if that doesn't work, well, then let's go. Okay. Then we tried that. We know that doesn't work. And I'm a big fan of like, hey, let's try it and we'll do it imperfectly and then we'll pivot.
I'm very much reminded, there's an analogy I've used with clients a bit around puzzles. And because I find a lot of people like puzzles. I've never had a lot of desk space for puzzles as a side note. But anyways, the point is, if you grab 2 pieces of a puzzle that have 1,000 pieces and they don't fit, you don't bang your head against the wall and get angry. You just pick up a different piece, right? So the faster we are able to check those pieces if they work or not and get a different one, the faster the puzzle is going to be built. Right. But it's like you have a picture on the box, and this is like theoretically your potential future, right? This is the dream in front of you on the box, and it's kind of blurry. And I have all these pieces that maybe fit, like they do fit somehow. We just don't know how yet. So like grab one, if it doesn't go, get a different one. But so many people get attached to like, no, these two have to work. It's like, no, you need to go to bed at 10 o'clock. Like you don't have to watch 12 episodes of The Walking Dead with your partner. to keep them happy. And if you do, it's maybe a different conversation. Or you don't want your goal as much as you think you might, which is also fine by me. But like there's a hole in the thinking here because you're attaching to these two pieces for some reason. And that's like, I mean, I don't find it hard to say, but maybe it's harder to hear. I don't know. But it's just such an interesting observation of this. How do you even know? All these pieces fit somehow, but like just keep on trying shit.
God, you said so many things in that I love. All of the pieces do fit, and I do think in life, like, uh, uh, despite I guess how much of a realist I am, I do try to go about things as optimistically or hopeful as I can because that is something I think is an asset. Sure, people
Absolutely.
feel like it's ignorant, but I'm like, doing it the other way is going to be really, really grim life.
Hmm.
All of the pieces fit. It's going to work out how it's supposed to. Your ability to see that out is going to come down to why are we getting stuck in these attachments? Why do you need this to work out? There's a reason, and it probably has to do with fear. It probably has to do with not wanting to confront some aspect of this process. Oh, you don't want to communicate because, like, I mean, the sleep thing is like, we could beat this to death for like 40 minutes and like go through so many scenarios because that's a constant. Like, it's a
Hmm.
constant for everyone. That's like, okay, well, if you're single, you have a little bit more control. A lot of people aren't single. A lot of people, they have kids, they have a spouse, they have someone that like they do have to cohabitate with, and having those hard conversations. It's like, it's one of these two things. Either you don't want your goals as much as you say you do, which is fine, or you don't want to communicate, which is also fine. It's probably not fine. Like, just
Yeah.
sidebar,
Yeah.
definitely not fine.
Side note, not a good sign, but
Not a good side. But for the example, it's like those are the
yeah.
only two options. There's no other options. So just you pick your adventure, and then we'll
Yeah.
unpack from there. And I think the more granular you can get, with literally like the action. So what is the activating event? And then exploring that. Okay, what's your belief behind it? How often are you just stopping there and you're like, that's my circumstance.
Yeah.
That's where we are. It's like, cool. Do you want that to be where we are? Do you want that to be the end point and that just to be your life for the rest of the time that you're here? It can be, and it probably will be if we don't
Yeah.
do anything about this.
More people than not would say, yes, that is what I want based off of the actions they choose. Right. It's like, other than when they get a coach involved, a lot of the time there's a heavier degree of commitment because there's a financial commitment there as well, which seems to be oddly enough more enticing to people than just like having a goal and having, but and I'm the same way. I'm no different. My nutrition is not where it should be right now, and I don't have a coach to help me with it. I'm very aware of that, but it's like not the biggest rock in front of me right now, but that's the conversation I've had. I'm like, this is frustrating, but not enough to change just yet.
Yes, yes. Being able to own that and have the security to know, like, hey, this goal can matter, but I have to prioritize what needs to be prioritized. And that's been a huge theme, really, the last 2 years, the 2 years that I've been in school. I went into school thinking I was going into nursing and no longer coaching. It just so
Sure.
happened that the peak of my fitness career peaked immediately when I started clinical. So I'm like, well, we're going to figure this out because there is a lot of need for this out there.
Yeah.
It used to be something that truly I was like, it's going to be too much. I'm going to have to reduce my under 10 clients, and I'm just going to have to close shop. I'm probably not going to compete. And in turn, it's like, no, I actually can handle a lot more than I thought. But
Hmm.
there's still really the last like 6 months. Okay, like I have so many spinning plates that I'm very excited about and motivated to work towards. But I also have the recognition of like, okay, chasing all of these at once is not effective. I'm not going to
Hmm.
make progress towards any of them in the way that I want to. So finish out school. That has to happen. There's a minimum amount of attention and time and effort that's going to go to that. Now I'm done with school. Now that can be reallocated. Cool. But even within that, it's like, okay, business, I'm scaling it. I hired my first 2 employees this month. That was a
Congratulations.
milestone.
Absolutely.
Amazing. And it feels amazing. But I'm like, should I be competing right now? that would require effort, attention, just time.
Mm.
Can I do both? Not well. Not well. And I mean, this is often a conversation we see with individuals who they want to chase physique goals as well as performance goals. They want to get stronger, and they also want to lose body fat. They want to put on a significant amount of muscle, but they also want to get smaller, and they don't want strength and performance to suffer. Okay, well, that's not going to be effective. We're going to be in that gridlock for a while if we're chasing both with the same intensity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of classic spoon theory, right? It's you only have so many in a day, and when they're gone, yeah, you can pull some strings and hype up some extra adrenaline or whatever to keep you going a little further, but that eventually will burn out and your health will suffer as a consequence, right? And so it's like, where do I want my spoons to go for this season or this chapter of life? And as you said, it's like nursing school, you want to pass, turns out. So that's going to take some energy and attention. But competing, I've never competed. It's my perception that it's very emotionally taxing in the sense of like once you cut your food, you become a bit of a different person, right? And you need to be aware of that.
Say.
Yeah, it's
allegedly.
Yeah, somebody who knows me might have said that at one point in my life. Yeah,
it's incredibly taxing, and it's something I think a lot of people overestimate their ability to tolerate. Whereas even with an extreme fat loss phase, because I use it for non-competitors as well, I'm like, hey, this is something that you're going to have to prioritize, and there are sacrifices you're going to have to make in order to achieve this, because it's not going to be in the short term. It's not going to be a 4-week thing that you get on stage and you do well. Could you technically do it? Well, if we're using a metric of pass fail, yes, you can. And if that's what you care about, okay, that is conveying a different message to me. My expectations are different if it's just a matter of getting on stage. If it's a matter of getting on stage or achieving a very steep, hefty fat loss goal, it's like, okay, but to do this well, to do this correctly, that looks a lot different than just doing it, period. And some things are just do it. Nursing school was just do it. It was pass fail. Did you finish? Yes. Okay. Competing, even doing it at your highest capacity, even doing it extremely well, checking all the boxes, turning all the stones, yes, you can still get there. And it doesn't matter. You can do terribly. You can do so much worse, because statistically, only one person wins.
yeah.
But that's kind of freeing when you go into a sport like that. That's so subjective. It's like all you can do is show up extremely prepared and giving your best. It's probably, more often than not, it's not going to result in the outcome that you're hoping for. So establishing for clients, like with the fat loss, it's like, we can get you there. You won't be able to sustain that very low body fat. And I think having that appreciation for how fleeting that like actual
Right.
that final leg of it is, I think it's important. I think it's a lot of the time something that people they miss out on, that opportunity of growth, and ultimately it makes them not appreciate it as much, appreciate the process as much, because before you know it, you're coming out of that because you need to, because you need food. You can't be on the starvation diet forever, or there are consequences.
I'm reminded of happiness again, in that a lot of people seem to think it's like this long-term chronic state or steady state, versus like it's an experience that you get along the path of life, periodically, right? Happiness isn't the goal. It's not a long-term thing. It's like you'll step there from time to time when you're doing things that are in line with your values and you're doing the things that you love. But similar to fat loss and being on stage, like if you want to be at 5% body fat forever is going to look a lot different, like, because it's not sustainable. Well, it's sustainable until it's not. We'll just put it that way.
Until it's not. And I mean, I think what you derive happiness from, I think getting very clear on that, not just, oh, it's getting on stage or achieving this goal. I think when you really dig into, hey, is it tied to doing something that reasonably you didn't want to do and you did it anyway? You did it because you knew it was the right thing to do, was good for you, when most people would have encouraged you not to do it. That feels fucking good.
Oh yeah.
I think for me, doing that as frequently as possible, having those hard conversations, communicating when the easiest thing in the world would be to not communicate, communicating on things that are very difficult, that feels good. And I think when we can lay that out for clients and show them, like, hey, you don't have the belief yet, but you will have it first time you do it. It's there. I mean, that's like my pitch when someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I know I need more muscle. The next time I want to diet, next time I diet, I want my shape to look better. I want to have a significant improvement. Cool. That's going to take a period of not getting that dopamine response and not seeing the scale go down. It's actually going to feel worse. You're going to have so much doubt, exponentially more doubt. We're going to be moving in what feels like the opposite direction of where you've been moving thus far. But I promise you, you do that one time, you'll get that buy-in, because the magnitude in which that'll carry over to future diets and your competency, your confidence in yourself to see this out, you just got to do it one time. So I think like stressing that heavily and really being like, hey, I get it, because I was skeptical. I didn't think it was going to be worth it. I thought, hey, okay, maybe I just like pissed off like a whole year and like didn't make any progress, which is very possible if you're not doing things correctly. But you do it correctly long enough, you won't have this same degree of doubt. You still might not like it. You still might, it's still not going to be fun. It's not going to be as fun as like that quick gratification. But at least this feeling that really is keeping you frozen, that will be more manageable.
It's kind of that people will believe it's possible when you show them that it's possible. And that's in terms of any goal with yourself, or it's like the 4-minute mile or whatever, right? It's like, or not 4-minute mile, whatever, all the fast times in anything that's ever been broken, every record. It's like, oh, that's not possible. It's like, we'll see. And one person does it, and then 12 people do it in the next 5 years. It's like, it is possible. It's just not maybe yet. And as soon as you said, they see that it's like, oh shit, this is applicable to me too. It's not just these other people that I know, or these internet people and whatever with different lives than me. They don't understand how hard it is, because look at my life. It's like, not to minimize any of that. And it still can be for you as well. Right? It's like, yes, it can.
It can. And I think when it comes to regret, for me, the things in life that have weighed on me the heaviest are the things that I allowed to pass me by on account of the mental state I was in, on account of limiting belief. I mean, like like with the elephants in the circus at a young age, they got the stake in the ground and they're just kind of taught like, hey, this is what is going to keep you here. They get old, okay, well, they still have that same belief. And I think it was Jim Quick. He's like, if you fight hard enough for your limits, you get to keep them. And for me, like, I just turned 29 and I'm like, fuck, dude, like, honestly, the amount of my life that I looked at those stakes and I was like, yep, that's permanent.
There they are.
Yep. And it's where I'm at. And I mean, like, disgust is a pretty heavy word, but like, I wouldn't say shame, but I look back and I don't know. I try to look back with empathy as like, okay, well, like, it makes sense why I had those beliefs, but moving forward here on out, like, and not just like, oh, this next year I'm going to get out of my own way. It's like, no, today I'm going to get out of my own way. Noon, I'm going to get out of my own way. Like, what is this story that's making today more comfortable and allowing me to really taking away from the possibility of what this could be? And I don't want to feel that way. And I have felt that way. And I think the awareness of at least digging back and to be like, you know what, I did have control of that. And maybe from a place of fear, maybe that's why I kept myself stuck. But I think like when you shift your inner dialogue and you do take responsibility for all of those times, it doesn't feel good, but it also gives you a lot of control. And like, so whatever 4D chess you have to play with yourself to be like, okay, that didn't feel good because you felt like you didn't have control. You know how you can have control everything after this? It's not doing that same thing again, not letting that be a pattern and just being the state that you accept is reality.
I'm wondering, what advice do you give to someone who doesn't have people to help or support them in their corner along their, not even in a goal, but just day to day, to find, like, say in a partnership, if someone has a goal and their partner doesn't really care or doesn't, in the example of The Walking Dead, like, I'm going to watch the episodes anyways. And then, okay, now what do you do, right? It's like you're setting yourself up for not necessarily failure, but more stress. And sometimes that is just going to be the case. But it's like, okay, well, what do we do with that information? Is there any sort of broad advice that comes to mind for you in a situation like that?
Yeah, yeah, because that's a real example. No, honestly, this is going to be very nuanced, but I think globally, you need to be in a partnership, whatever that looks like, whatever that means to you, whatever level of commitment it is. You need to be one that which you can communicate honestly. And if the things that you want to accomplish, and let's use something very reasonable like sleep.
Yeah. What, you want to sleep?
Outrageous. So
Yeah.
unreasonable. It's like, so, but in all seriousness, that was me for a long time, in different relationships where I was just like, oh, like these needs are too, and I think when you don't have people around you, that you can communicate with, or you can communicate your needs honestly, I think it puts you in a very unnecessarily high stress state. And now you are compensating for not just the issue itself of a lack of sleep. Now you're compensating for an inability to communicate what your needs are. And we're talking about Maslow's like level 1. This isn't even like, intimacy or self-actualization. Like, I'm not going to say that's not the partnership you should be in, but we should shine a light there.
I'm going to wink. Yeah.
Like blink twice if like, hey, just message us in the comments or message us personally one-on-one. But truly, it can be uncomfortable. And like, I'm not trying to minimize that because I understand it. It can feel like, oh, I'm asking for something. And I think a lot of the hesitation for people to communicate what their needs are, like in interpersonal relationships, are they don't want to have, they don't want to be disappointed. They don't want to be rejected, because at the core of it, okay, then you get into a fight and it's like, well, now I've been rejected. My need was rejected. It is on you and you yourself to protect your needs. And at its core, and if the people around you or person around you is not supportive of you protecting your needs, you should probably look into that, because that's not, unless that is how you want to live, which I would venture to say is not how you want to live, because the other side is like really fucking great, by the way. It's great. Just like
highly recommend that one.
Highly 10 out of 10. It's great.
Yeah, would do again.
Yes. But starting with the dialogue of like, hey, I know we've been doing it this way for a while. I think me not getting enough sleep, or like if it's dietary, I think like me overindulging or eating like a little sporadically, because like these are the conversations I have with clients, and like, here's your script, try this, and if it doesn't work, it's okay, we can do another one next week. But I'm like, hey, the things I want to do, I know in our household we've been doing it this way. I think for myself, I think I'm going to need to like go to bed early. You can stay up. That's totally fine. Like, it's not like you have to come to bed with me. It's okay. But just so you know, I'm going to do this. And I think like communicating that respectfully, I think it sounds really rudimentary, but I think it's so valuable in a coach's vantage point to be like, these are the words you need to convey. You should be able to do that. And if it's that uncomfortable for you to communicate, then we need to practice this. And that even works within the coaching relationship. Like, hey, what needs in coaching do you feel like, or maybe are not being met, or what needs, or is there another way I can support you here? It's great if you're prompted. It's great if the coach can be like, hey, like, tell me this. But I think the practice of advocating for yourself, I think that's something within the realm of health, fitness, physique enhancement of all sorts. that needs to come second nature. You need to be in a position where because if you can't communicate externally your needs, what does that tell us about your ability to communicate with yourself? Are you just dissociating as a default? Probably.
Well, and I wonder too, like a lot of it in my mind goes to story work and then the association of words such as selfishness, and having a negative connotation to the word selfishness is something that makes those conversations harder to have, right? Because not only do you worry about how it will be responded to, but you also then feel selfish, which you feel is a bad thing, versus like, I hope you're selfish so that I can then also help you succeed in whatever way I'm able. Right. And then I hope that you want that same thing for me. And that's all easy to say. It's harder to do in practice with the wrong person for sure. But like that reality, I don't know that I think it's accessible to more people than they think. It's through those conversations, and it's through that sort of, you got to put yourself on the line a little bit to see how it goes, because people will treat you however you let them. And that is true over time. But so it could just not only be, or not so much be an intentional thing. Like, I just want to watch 10 episodes and like, I don't have any idea that you want to go to bed. That could also be a reality. It's like, hey, you know what? I actually think that we could go to bed, or I can go to bed, or this is enough TV. Maybe they're like, oh shit, we've just been doing this for 2 years. I didn't think twice about it. Maybe.
Very, very much so. And I think I would say like going into it and assuming ignorance, not malice, is
Sure, absolutely
helpful. But truly like breaking it down into, I think in any kind of relationship, I think the support for you to take care of yourself, and that to be understood that like you taking care of yourself is not selfish, not in the way that we use it, I would say, culturally. Like the word itself has a very negative connotation. It implies that it's something that you are doing, and you being selfish is now taking away from someone else. And sure,
right.
technically, there may be consequences that impact someone else, but you taking care of yourself is not inherently selfish. So taking care of yourself physiologically, but also working towards your goals so that you don't build resentment. I think that's often like overlooked. It's okay, a matter of being a martyr is overrated, and it comes with a lot of toxic traits too. It comes with a lot of resentment and a lot of heaviness that ultimately we're going to poison this thing that we have that, is really great and really, hopefully for that individual, really special and, fulfilling. Sacrifice, like being, I don't know, self-sacrificial, like you're doing no one any favors, and
Yeah.
you're changing what something probably once was and making it something completely different that is less beautiful than maybe it started.
No, absolutely. And it does seem to be the case that more people, including myself, a lot of the time, it's like, well, I would rather be uncomfortable than somebody that I care about be uncomfortable, because I know I'm fine when I'm uncomfortable. And that's, I take that into the medical perspective, but just in day to day, it's like, this is very low level discomfort in my spectrum of experiences of discomfort. So like, I'll take this and shoulder it for you, even though you're not asking me to. Whereas it's like more people than not will ask you not to do that. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. I just was unaware. And as you said, not assuming malice, just assuming ignorance. It's such a beautiful rule of thumb, I think, just in a general sense in any relationship. Because generally speaking, the people in your life care about you to some degree. Imagine.
Who would have thought?
Yeah,
It's
right.
amazing, isn't it? Yeah, they don't want you to suffer. Like,
yeah,
what do you know? And it is one of those things. It's like your tolerance is not what they find value from. And I think
right.
it's a really important lesson for people who can tolerate a lot, is that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And this is where it goes back to, all right, let's look at this like rationally. Are you suffering for the sake of suffering because it keeps you safe, because it helps you avoid that discomfort? Because maybe you'd pick the suffering over the tough conversation or the potential conflict or the potential rejection.
Or the potential positive future. It's like, what if you turn out to be the best version of you? What does that look like?
And yeah, what if that person that you're with, or maybe in this case, it's an inner dialogue, you are like, yeah, like I do want to take on this challenge. I do want to change trajectories and challenge myself more. It's like, so that would then require we raise this baseline of comfort. That would then
Yeah.
require that you are exposing yourself to more opportunities of failure, because now this baseline is no longer everything that you can tolerate. It's all things that potentially could be intolerable. It's like, let's find those things. Like, let's explore. Like, what are the things that actually make me want to break? Like, I think in any capacity, when we're talking about I guess establishing buy-in, it comes from having a radical awareness and then ownership over your beliefs and your feelings, and also recognizing feelings and thoughts like they only have to have as much weight and attention as you'd like them to. You can take away the meaning of them. You can consider it just very fleeting, and just as it comes, you can let it go. It doesn't have to be permanent.
Yeah.
And that's where, if you don't have clarity around your values and the things that matter to you and who you want to be, it can get very foggy, become very confusing, because those feelings, they're going to inherently like take place for the absence of values.
It's one of those things, or two things come to mind just in my own sayings to my own self. It's like the brain has been designed to keep us alive for thousands of years. And so to think that we should have some sort of control over what the brain says and thinks just seems completely unreasonable to me. It's like I should be able to control the thoughts going through my mind at all times because they're uncomfortable or they're overwhelming. It's like, no, your brain is literally an alarm system that's telling you not to fucking die all the time forever. Right. It's like if you think you have the mental capacity to take over that system, you're wrong. Like you don't know how to beat your own heart. Don't pretend. Right. It's like let it do the autopilot thing, but in the same breath, don't try to control your thoughts because your thoughts think, right? Your emotions emote. Like you're not meant to control them all the time. However, you do get to choose what you do with them.
Responding, not reacting.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
exactly.
your responses are conscious, and those are your responses, your conscious responses, and your opinions. Those are the only two things we actually have control over.
Mm,
Everything else is by proxy autonomic. So let it be just that. And
exactly.
I
Yeah.
think when I don't know, when I feel that I would say like the tendency to be like, I wish I had more control. Why? Why? Would it actually help? Would it make this thing easier? No, not really. It would just make you feel like there's less of a risk on the other side of this thing. It still comes back to like, okay, you're fearful that you're not going to do it right. What proof do you have that you should know how to do this right without
Exactly.
practice or skill? Like, who are you to think
Yeah.
that like
Yeah.
you got these like programs built in? It's not how this works. Like, it's gonna
No.
take some fucking up, and that's good. Like, I mean, like being a beginner at anything, uh, own that. You're not supposed to be able to do this correctly, and it's freeing in a way when I think you take a step back and you're like, this is the point where I figure out what deficits are in my knowledge base, whether it's
Mhm.
around a skill, really any skill. Um, but I think these are the aspects of coaching. The writing a diet, writing training, telling someone you didn't get your steps in, like those are all very easy
Yeah.
things. It's these conversations and troubleshooting. Okay, like what is the root issue? Where does this come from? And then how do we modify this belief that you have so that it doesn't repeat? It doesn't continue to perpetuate itself um, within your conscious, subconscious. I think that's the hard part for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, it's chosen discomfort, and that does get over or easier over time because you just get more used to it. You start believing in yourself more, and you know that you're fine on the other side of things. It's one of the reasons I do a cold shower every day. I don't care about health things and whatever. I've been doing it for years, but it's like I never want to do it, and I'm always fine when I do. So it's like this everyday evidence of baseline. It's not that big a deal, man. Just fucking do it and try it, and life goes on. Because guess what? More times than not, health is better than you think, and like we're pretty resilient. It takes a lot more than you think to do any meaningful damage to this thing, as you know, within the competing space and the diet space and whatever, like you can do a lot of really dumb things and still be pretty okay. So like, just try it out. And I'm not saying that with drugs, but I mean in life. Like
No.
yeah,
I'll put the asterisk there. Women don't take anabolics.
Yeah, that's right.
Try it out. Definitely don't do that. You want to do the cold shower? Sick. Okay.
Yeah,
you
right.
Want to do the hard thing? Build the pathways. Build that inner dialogue of like, yeah, this fucking sucks. It's never gonna be excited about this. What I'm gonna be excited about is like having done it and been like, you remember how it sucked like 20 minutes ago? It wasn't fun. Yeah, we still did it. Like
now we get it's all good.
The way. Yeah.
That's it. I want to, as I always do with this question, I kind of take a hard left turn because it never really leads into death per se. But I always like to ask how you describe or how you would describe your relationship with death. And then as a follow-up, have you ever had any near-death experiences?
Relationship with death. Okay. It's inevitable. We don't have control over it. The acceptance of that, the acceptance that, I kind of look at it like you could do everything right. And I guess I'll, do a call back to what I said earlier about like the friend's partner who's like, I'm cursed and like these things happen to me because there is beauty in randomness and how things occur. Some things I was like, I'm a romantic and I'm like, yeah, there's serendipity and there's a rarity in how, things can happen, but in the same essence. Things cannot happen and it can mean nothing. And I think like just appreciating that for what it is, that it doesn't have to mean anything more than this is the way it was probably going to go.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of see death in the same way. I mean, granted, I've had, I want to say a couple close calls.
Sure.
Ones that ultimately life kept going. And I mean, like on the other side of that, it's like, well, you see, so what if it didn't keep going? Do you really want to spend any more time leading up to that next close call, which we're all going to get to that point where it's just lights out, just ends. And that could be today. Like you don't have a little sim bar above your head, like, ooh, you got 24 days left. But if you did, if that was...
That'd be stressful.
You thought, I think the expectation, like, I think like when you lose someone close, like, I mean, obviously there is a grieving process and there's a grieving process that comes. And I would say like, generally I've developed more of a belief around losing someone that you love, that if they were in pain, they're in a better place. And like, that is what's best for them. That's what like ultimately, like they don't have to suffer anymore. And I hope to get to a point, when it's my time where I'm not suffering when that happens, but there's a very good chance I will be. And I think like knowing that, okay, that pre-death period where you're probably going to be uncomfortable. You're probably going to lose all the things that make you, whether physiologically or psychologically. How do you want to feel going into that? Do you want to feel scared because you ran out of time? Like, do you want to feel the weight of procrastination to live your life and do the things you love? Or, for the nihilist out there, what up? Like, maybe you're like, you know what? I didn't get to hate my time here enough. Like, I didn't get to be miserable and suffer. I didn't get to suffer enough. It's like, cool. That could be tomorrow. That could be next month. It could be this year. And if you, I think, frame it rather like the relationships that you have, the people that you care about, the people that you love, what would you want them to do if you were going to lose them? How would you treat them? The movie Old, are you familiar with that one? It's great. It's a M. Night Shyamalan actually, but there's a scene in the very end of no spoilers, but it's like elderly couple. They've like they've aged, and they fighting at the beginning of the movie, and they have this conversation at the end. It's beautiful, and they're like, they can't remember the initial fight, and they're like, I don't know, I think we're fighting on the way here, and like, it doesn't matter, it's fine, like, it wasn't a big deal. And I think, like, when you treat things in life that cause you a lot of pain that are within your control, and you like clutch onto them, like truly in the essence, like you are hanging on to them because in that moment they matter. What are you sacrificing to hang on to that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the potential better future that could be now.
It could be now.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I am very stubborn, so it's like there are things that I'll ruminate on, but I really do try to ask myself, like, what is it going to look like being stuck, being upset, or feeling bad, like intentionally, like sitting in that feeling longer than I need to, and like really identifying with the word need. Like, do I
Yeah.
benefit by sitting here, and what is it costing me? Because everything has an inherent cost. So I don't know. I've lost people much earlier than I would have expected, and that's shocking. But at the same time, it is eye-opening in that it does give you, I guess, reminds you how precious this time is, and the time is, frankly, it's not enough. Like, for me, that really becomes apparent, not necessarily in the loss of someone, but when things are going really well. So right now in my life, things are going fucking incredible. They're so good. They're the best they've been in so long.
Yeah.
And that scares me because I'm like, wow, this could get taken away. This could end, and I have no control over it ending. Okay, well, like, let's enjoy it while we can. If that's another 50 years, great. If that's another 5 years, great. But ultimately, like, I have no say in that.
Yeah. Well, and it just brings you back into being present, right? It's that this could end literally today or right now. And so I'm going to love every minute of it. And it's, I don't know what your experience with, near death experience was like. What I would say, at least for me, it's been like there's this sort of, I don't know, it maybe a wake period afterwards where just things are different. Priorities shift. It's like things are very much in front of my face, like what matters to me. And then over time, as more time gets, elapses between things, it seems like I wouldn't say shifting back into old patterns, but there's less of a sense of urgency. And then it's just like, how do I sustain that urgency and excitement over time without causing myself sort of this chronic state of being tired, right? And that's literally a puzzle piece I'm still, anyways, I work on all the time, but it's kind of this, yeah, how do I live more in that pre-death energy more often? Because it's kind of exciting when you think, oh, this ride's fucking over pretty soon. Not by choice of mine, but like, so let's ride it out. Right. And it's,
I would hope it's not by choice of yours.
No. Just I've as I said, heart failure and anyways, necrotizia cellulitis tried to take me on a couple of times and these kinds of things. But it's just been, but when you're in it, you're like, fuck, it's been out. Life is wild. That's the name of the presentation I did last summer. And it's just such a, because it's always wild. You never know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, let alone what you might do or someone else. It's like, it's all just a surprise.
I think touching back to creating that urgency without letting it run you down. I think dumping into things that make you feel alive, that feel really good, that don't have a negative impact to you or those around you, but the things that really, really make you feel good, but without the clarity around that. And I guess, like, I should be clear what I mean by that. Like, for me, that is helping. It is giving someone that relief. Like, it's being that beacon of support when someone, like, frankly, when they don't expect it, when they're fine without it, technically giving someone that, I want to say, that ability to come up for air. and
Yeah.
be in several forms, but that feels unlike anything else for me. For me,
Mhm.
that feels really fucking good. That's transient though. And I mean, like, I think finding those opportunities to be that for someone else and to give them a moment where they are seen, heard, understood, when frankly they feel so undeserving of that,
Right.
that feels
Yeah.
good. That feels that I'll indulge in that as much as I can. And I think, yeah, it's abstract, but it's also a matter of like, we don't have a lot of that. There's a lot of people who, I mean, and I think again, under the context, like it doesn't take away from your ability to take care of yourself, but serving, being selfless in moments where it would make sense to not be selfless. Um, I think that's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. And that kind of answers the question of um, what comes to mind when you think about a time in your life that you felt most alive. And that's sounds like it's with those moments.
Yeah, yeah. Individuals who are incredibly resourceful, who who could be fine without a lot of support. I think being able to give that to someone who does not need it,
Yeah.
doesn't expect it, and frankly, like when you can see it click, when you can see like, wow, I've left this person better than I found him. That
Yeah. It's the
that's
big
my
sigh is what I kind of think about with that. It's that body, the full body, like, oh, what a relief. There's just having that reprieve for a moment and having that facilitated by someone who cares about you. It's something else. And that's, I think, in healthcare, you will find you experience that probably pretty regularly, whether or not they appreciate it, or I guess it depends on what area of medicine you get into. But uh, speaking from my own experience as a patient, I've shared that moment with a lot of different nurses, and it's always very precious to me. So I guess that's one of the reasons I'm very interested and supported in your nursing career. I cannot express enough my appreciation for nurses in general. The amount of literal shit you guys deal with in the course of your career is just like, anyway, it's unbelievable. But literally helping people feel alive and stay alive. Um, Not everybody can do it. So that's something. Anyways, I appreciate that in you. And I don't know anything about you until today. So it's an immediate, I like you because you're writing your nursing exam. So
thank
yeah,
you, thank
yeah,
you so much. Yeah, I think I think in the realm of coaching as well,
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
something I've found that is incredibly rewarding is being able to integrate into uh, someone's perception around how they feel, their beliefs around what is possible, and giving them the skill of having autonomy in what they
Mm,
want to do with their body, not just physique wise, like in a, I guess, aesthetic, cosmetic sense, but also in a performance sense. It's an incredibly vulnerable aspect that I think no matter how deep you are into your own health and wellness, I think that is something many people struggle with and feel helpless when it comes to their control over that. And to be able to not just help and make an immediate impact, but teach someone how to develop that skill. And
mm,
in all aspects, be like, hey, you know how you wake up every day and you feel defeated because your whole life you felt defeated because you felt like, hey, I am subject to these like very lizard brain impulses of like, I want to eat the fucking donuts, or I want to get, I don't want to go to the gym, or, whatever it is. I want to do these things that are going to move me further away from my goals. To be able to teach someone like, no, 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 you can get to a point where like, yeah, maybe you're not completely satisfied with where you're at, but you have the tools, you have the skills, the knowledge on how to get closer to where you want to go. That, that feels really good.
yeah. I wonder, do you know where that desire to help people through those times comes from for you?
Yeah, I think in a lot of instances, I've seen genuine kindness when it wasn't expected.
Mm,
Fortunate that I'm fortunate that I've had individuals help me along the way who didn't owe me anything, who it was unsolicited, it was unconditional. And that really was the foundation for me, being shown unconditional kindness in moments where I needed it a lot. That was a good, that fulfilled something that allowed me to, I mean, it sounds dramatic. It allowed me to keep going in whatever aspect it was. It allowed some clarity around the doubts that felt very heavy. And I mean, like earlier this year, was very, very fortunate to have good people in my corner as I was going through, you know, a big transition for me within my life. And I think when you see that in others, when you see others that can act very selflessly and do good, like just do good, it's beautiful. But early on, there are instances where that's exactly what I needed. And I didn't see that. I didn't see that kindness. And to me, it seems very intuitive. It's like you see someone in need, you see that you have the ability to stop what you're doing, or in some cases not stop what you're doing, because maybe it is as simple, you know, for you, it might be like metaphorically, you're not lifting a finger, but for them, it means the world. And every opportunity I have to do that when I can, yeah. If
It's a fuck
off my
yes.
back, yeah, it's easy. It's light work, like it's child's play. So it just seems like, okay, you know, I work in a luxury industry, like collectively, it's a very like the top of the unnecessary ones.
Sure.
But I think when you can consistently leave the people you find better than when you found them, I don't know. I think it can matter, and when it does, I mean, like people tend to be very appreciative of that.
I'm reminded of I don't know, I guess I've been thinking it for years, but we grow into the people we needed when we were kids. Like, and that's not necessarily in all aspects of life, but at whatever stage in your life when that kindness was shown, you were shown that it's possible. And then you then know that you can be that person too. And that's something like, at least in my life, it's like, that's been a long term, like, what is my purpose in the world and why am I here? These types of things, right? Where do I want to focus my energy? Said another way, it's like, that's literally one of them. It's, if I can somehow help other people feel less alone in this world, in their experiences, that's part of my path for sure. It's that same feeling of like, it doesn't cost me anything, but the difference is not negligible.
No, it's not negligible. And then when you can do that truly with no expectation, when you can do it needing nothing in return, even exclusive of the appreciation, knowing that, hey, this was the right thing to do, and understandably could have done so many other things to
Right.
this,
Yeah.
but we did the right thing. It's like, I don't know. I think selfishly, I think I built some equity off of consistently trying to do that, trying to, I don't know, minimize the collateral for people when I can.
Well, and it gives you more evidence of who you are and who you say you are. And that's always a net positive for ourselves. And that's, I wouldn't say that costs anything or it's a selfish pursuit. It's just, that is just the case. So here's more evidence that I am who I say and think I am. That's a great thing. Let's continue. I'm wondering if you have a favorite creative outlet.
Favorite creative outlet?
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, like, background in production, yes, I enjoy like cinematography, yes. I wouldn't necessarily say I get too indulge in that right now, as I just hired an editor. So the first employee was like, okay, this is, I have had that tendency to still edit at this point in my business, and I was like, okay, this has got to go. This is like 60 hours a month. Like this is too much.
Yeah.
I would say, something that I am into, fairly new into, just last couple of years, is free diving.
Oh, wow.
And I wouldn't say that's a creative outlet, but it's an outlet.
Sure.
Can we call it that?
Yeah. No, that's fun. I mean, I can't swim, so that's super fun.
It's a little extreme. It's a little
Yeah.
extreme in terms of sports, but I find the individuals who do it professionally, I find that, I mean, like, that's like, to me, that's the closest thing to like traveling out to outer space that we
Right.
have. And you have these people that just do it, that just go 300-400 feet, no, like just raw,
Just raw dog in the
just
swimming.
exactly. It's like
Yeah, sure.
we have like bodybuilding, where it's like you're fighting the physiological process of starving. And then you have these humans, you have these just specimens who are like, I'm going to fight the physiological need to stay alive.
For a
I'm
living,
gonna
yeah.
override cellularly what's needed. And to me, I'm just like, oh, like, not.
Well, but you're signing up for it, though. I wonder, what's the metric that's used to measure? Like, do you go for depth or for time or for distance? How do people free dive and then improve?
So for myself, so I went through the certification. I did not get certified because you need to go to 60 feet.
Did not pass.
Did not pass. But, and I'll give myself a pat on the back. Like, I grew up in Texas. Like,
Sure.
we did exactly like go out. I didn't go out until like the middle of the ocean. So this was like my second time going out just straight on just a really small boat, drop a kettlebell down, drop a line to it. Also, my instructor, he takes the line diving real serious. So, I mean, like, there are, like, within esports, there's form, and like the cost of not having good form is what's the term? Your capillaries in your trachea explode. So it's pretty costly. So
high risk.
Very
Yeah.
highest, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he didn't pass me. Some instructors are like, yeah, like, if you can get down to the kettlebell, it's fine.
Just go do it.
Yeah, just whatever it takes, right? Pass, fail, or just fail.
Yeah, just it's over now.
Yeah. But in this case, like, even like so like for like oxygen conservation, that's the metric, is like, okay, so like you have your breath holds, and like static holds you can do like in a pool, so you can like practice like how long you can remain in that state of conservation. You can also do holds that are like you can do, I guess, like in your apartment, you can like, and so I had practiced that like several times, and like out the gate I was very good at that. Like, it was like a minute breath hold, which is like good for like,
wow.
I was like,
beginning.
That was like, it was like my first time. I was like, oh shit,
wow,
might not be terrible at this. Now just get the open water when the like sharks and like different shit underneath that it's terrifying. Like, very like, so for me, this kind of ties back to like finding that artificial discomfort, or in this case, like very literal discomfort.
Yeah.
I very like, baseline was like, and let me back up. This was my first clinical rotation in nursing school, and I was feeling very defeated.
Sure.
So naturally, I was like, let me put this into perspective. Let me try something that's even more defeating, so this feels a little more manageable. So I signed up for certification like the next week. I was like, sick, okay, this is gonna kick my ass. Let's just see where I am, whether I get certified or not. It'll be good, and I want to have like a formal instruction on this. Metrics, I mean, like, obviously form, yes, like you need to understand I guess your proprioception with actually like diving, submerging yourself, and then being able to sustain that state of conservation. That is all within your mind. And for me, the state I was in life was not very prone to this. And I love, I don't know, kind of the duality of like, you can't really bullshit how well you're conserving oxygen.
No.
So
it's a pretty good test. Yeah. I props to you. 3 minutes. I can't hold my breath for 30 seconds, not in the water, in the water. Anyways, it's quite stressful. And the pressure, how deep do you go? Like, even just being up to my head, it feels very hard to breathe. And so I find confusing, or swimming, very confusing, and just how people do it and aren't stressed all the time.
And that kind of is I guess the paradox of this is like, okay, this is unnatural. This isn't something I do often. I didn't grow up like a swimmer or anything. So
Yeah.
every aspect of this, except the breath hold on land,
Sure.
put me in water. And it's like, okay, we got to work on that. Every aspect for me is a challenge, and which I kind of love. I'm like, this isn't going to take a while to get really good at it. In terms of, you'd asked about depth. So you have to equalize. So you have to essentially, like, as you're going down, you switch from positive buoyancy, neutral buoyancy to negative buoyancy, which is like insane when you think about, okay, once you get to like 50, it's like just shy of where I was at. So I didn't get to feel it. I'm excited. Next milestone.
Yeah.
It's actually hard to fight that as you're getting down, because the buoyancy is going to pull you back up to the surface. You wear a weighted belt, just a little bit of weight. So it's not a lot. It's like 5
counterbalance.
pounds. Yeah. That takes you down, which if you've never been inverted underwater, fucking terrifying. Just inverted on land is terrifying for me. I don't like that at all. But you hit neutral buoyancy where you're not moving. If you don't kick, you don't move. You're just there. Then you hit negative buoyancy, and the ocean pushes you down. I think
we're keeping you now.
Am I describing buoyancy terribly? I am. Yes. So
that's crazy.
These really advanced divers, like part of they have different like divisions and types of dives you can do on the line. You can do no fin. You can get in a sled where they'll just put you in this shuttle and then just like shoot you down, and you hit negative buoyancy, and you're just literally going for depth, and the competition is to come back up. So depending on if that was something, I do not want to go into that competitively. This is just like to go see some fish like 50 feet down. I don't know, maybe get into spearfishing. We'll see. But
fun.
With all this, it's like the pressure, you have to be able to equalize to clear that pressure so you don't blow your eardrums. Equalization, progressively, every foot that you go down, I think it's every foot, you have to equalize exponentially more times. And if you're not used to that, that's pretty upsetting. Like, it doesn't feel great, which was also part of the problem when I went through the certification. I was like, you can't bullshit it. It's not something you tough out, which I think that's where my attraction to this came. It was like, you can tell yourself you're fine, but your body is gonna be like, no, we're not fine. Start over.
Yeah. I'm reminded of like a squat or a bench press, right? It's like, I can squat 500 pounds. Like, okay, go do it. You can't just pretend to be strong. Like, there's no, well, I have 400 on the bar and I'm just going to press that off my chest. No, you're not. You're probably going to get crushed.
Yep. Just self-delete, just
straight up done. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess to kind of start to wrap things up, if the next 2 chapters of your life, or the next 2 years is a chapter in your life, what is this coming chapter about?
Changing patterns that have been instilled for a long time. But I mean, I'd say, early this year, I went through a pretty big transition. I was in a 5-year relationship, and I got out of that and finished nursing school, started really focusing more of my efforts on scaling business. So doing a lot of things that I would say generally I'm uncertain of the right way to do them. And for me, that is going to come from a lot of internal work, a lot of, I would say, radical honesty around what I need and what I can tolerate. And it's less about, I would say, with bodybuilding, less about just pass fail, just suffering. It's the KPIs are more specific. And for me, I think that is really going to start, or that has started, with looking at what hasn't worked, looking at what has, looking at what I need, and really just kind of keeping an eye on, is this what I want to do? Am I going to be happy doing this? Not just now, not just for the next year, next 2 years. If I keep doing what I'm doing, what does the next 5 years look like for me? Who am I? What's the kind of person I am if I continue to do this who am I in 10 years, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you intend, like, are you planning to be a nurse, sort of a career nurse as well, and then do these other sort of side quests as you put them along the way as addition? It's fulfillment too, right? It's different things.
Um, I probably won't go bedside this year. I will take my licensure exam.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed critical care. Critical care
Yeah,
was fun, and I liked the aspects of how I performed in those environments, and I think I could do a really good job in that aspect. But right now, what I'm doing in the world of fitness in this space is really important because there's a lot of people who are being harmed because of
yeah,
a lack of dialogue around these things. And really, when I got into this segment of like female endocrinology, female sports performance, it was out of a need of like, fuck, like, okay, no, my mentor at the time, he's like, listen, like, you don't have to do this, because at this point I wasn't putting out content. I wasn't even like, I'm on TRT. He's like, if you don't talk about this, these things are still going to happen. And even like these very poor outcomes for people that are going to affect them the rest of their life. If you don't do it, the sport's going to get more competitive. Telehealth is growing exponentially fast.
yeah.
It's going to keep happening. And you have the ability to do something really, really impactful here. It'd be a shame if you don't do it. It'd be a shame if you didn't put most of your eggs into this.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that looks like in terms of my career as a nurse. I'm so glad I went to school, and I'm so glad I got the education, because it's helped me tremendously in what I'm doing within the fitness space. But right now, the energy is on making more of an impact, getting the information in front of the right people and more people.
No, it's a powerful and much needed something within the industry, absolutely. And that's, I want to believe there are more better coaches now than there used to be, but it's so saturated, right? There's just so much bullshit and YouTube, and it's all for clickbait and shit too, right? You've got all these people talking about things you don't know anything at all, and so to have someone from a place of authority and education and continuing education in all these aspects of your life, it's very exciting to see.
Thank you. I would like to think I'm doing something. I'd like to think it matters, and it's nice when I hear that. But I think at my core, I believe that it's helping more people that wouldn't be helped otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, like quantitative data aside, that's very fulfilling. So I think right now, like focusing on that aspect, I think that's a really good use of my efforts.
Nice, it's awesome. Last question. PDX cookies. If a person was going to buy just one to try, what flavor are you going to direct this person that may or may not be me to?
PDX holds a special place in my heart.
I did a little digging.
But I'm going to go a different way, which I don't think you did some digging. I'm going to go a different way because I found a new one. And
even better.
It's called stuffed cookies. Stuffed cookies. Like for my birthday last week, like we got basically a cookie charcuterie board. 10 cookies, and like these things, like they truly are like 3 PDX cookies like into one. Like like, the density is insane. Like if you have a problem growing, get on this. Like I don't want to
get on the cookies.
Like calorically, like they're unmatched. Oh God, I'm such a glutton. I'm gonna say the Reese's. I really like the Reese's. Underrated churro horchata.
Oh, they have a churro cookie.
A churro horchata. Like it's like that sounds so like
I don't even know what that is.
Exactly. Yeah. Just order this. If you're not in a fat loss phase.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm in a in between procedure phase. So I'm like, I'm not trying to get fat. I'm not trying to get lean. Just trying not to stress my body out exponentially more than it already is stressed. So, a cookie might be fine. And my birthday's at the end of the month too. So I'm kind of in this similar All right, we could buy a cookie for my birthday. That seems like a good idea.
Don't do yourself a disservice. Get a variety just on the off chance you're not satisfied with these flavors. Get at least five or
Five.
more. Like
Five is the
at least
recommendation.
five minimum. Yes, yes. That is my professional opinion.
Okay. Well, I better not. I'll take your medical advice, is what I'm going to try to say.
That's the only medical advice. Everything else is just for funsies, okay?
That's right.
So anything else online, just for jokes. They're just entertainment. Nothing medical at all. I'm just
There's never any medical advice.
Don't get your medical advice from my page, please. Except on cookies, professionally. 5 or bust. Like,
okay. Where do people find you? Is there anything you want to direct people to get in contact you? Yeah.
Yeah. So Instagram, YouTube, Patreon, same handle, Cory_fit, CORY_FIT. I am taking one-on-one clients. So if you're interested in coaching, lifestyle, competitor, fat loss, building phase, whatever it is, got the link in the show notes. Set up a 15-minute call with me. That is how we start the process. It's a little chat back and forth. Make sure that we're on the same page. We're aligned in terms of expectations. One-on-one consults, something that you're not locked into anything. It's very much like PRN. So I mean, like, it could be to do lab work. We can get on. We can talk about performance-enhancing drugs. We can, if you have a coach and you're happy with your coach, but you're like, hey, they don't do this part of it, or they don't do the lab work part of it, let's do just a group call. I mean, like, this happens actually more than people realize. Utilize me where it makes sense. 45-minute calls, got information in the show notes as well. Patreon for one-on-one advice, put out a lot of content every month, also in the show notes.
No, that's awesome. I appreciate your time, Cory. And like I said, I'm excited to see you continue down the path that you're on. It's nice to see in the industry, especially coming from just someone who cares.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. You're killing it with the podcast.
Thanks.
Really, really enjoyed this conversation.